Good afternoon, everyone. Really excited to be here in sunny New York City. My name is Alex Barnett. I'm head of developer relations. And I wanted to share with you why we strongly believe that API development in a collaborative context isn't just nice to have, it's a real necessity for modern software development and API development. But before we go, just a little bit about me. My career has been primarily focused on educating developers about developer platforms and a personal passion of mine, APIs. I really love APIs. I love helping developers learn about APIs, how to adopt them, how to integrate them. And I first came across Postman around 10 years ago. I was leading the Intuit developer platform responsible for the QuickBooks online APIs. And at the time, we had maybe tens of thousands of customers on QBO and practically zero apps, third-party apps that work with QuickBooks via the API. And so our team's mission was to go off and educate and enable third-party developers building SaaS apps for small businesses to integrate with QuickBooks API and make those integrations available to our end customers. So we were looking for all sorts of ways to be able to speed up the ability for those third-party developers to learn a complex API in a complicated domain, accounting. And we'd heard about Postman. They were, maybe 4 or 5 engineers at the time, and invited them to Mountain View and demoed their product. And we were like, oh yeah, we want that. The ability to be able to develop a collection of APIs with associated documentation, and then for a developer to be able to import that collection and run that collection inside of Postman was a real game changer in terms of accelerating the ability for a developer to learn and start getting going with the APIs. And, that was a small part of our overall success, but eventually we ended up with 7 million QBO customers using over 700 third-party apps. And so I was a fan of Postman way back 10 years ago. And in those days, you could describe as Postman being used in a single-player mode. You've got an engineer with their own instance of Postman working against the API. And in those days, there was no ability for us as an API provider to collaborate and connect with those developers outside of support tickets, jumping on calls, Zoom calls, and the like. Now, Postman since then has grown quite a bit. I've got 35 million developers on the platform globally. Around 98% of the Fortune 500 are using Postman. The chances are that if you're working with APIs, you probably know of or at least are using Postman. Now, as I mentioned, I'm particularly passionate about APIs. It's great working with a company like Postman. But just to do a little kind of way back machine here, back in 2008, I and the web developer community at the time were getting so excited because what we'd heard is like 559 APIs were now listed on programmable web, and that was a doubling year on year. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But we intuitively knew that APIs were going to be important. It would enable the programmability of the web increasingly networked and distributed and make the internet smarter, all enabled by APIs. And APIs are super powerful abstractions in computing that can encapsulate a lot of complex technology. They unlock creativity and enable new innovation. And without APIs, we just wouldn't have the functioning web as we have it today, mobile apps, or the cloud. They are the backbone of modern software development, connecting different systems and enabling seamless communication. But building APIs effectively requires more than just obviously writing code. It requires a truly collaborative effort across development, QA, product management, and many other teams, both internal to the organization and external to your organization. By the end of this session, I hope to be able to show you how not only is collaboration important in API development, but it is a necessity. and you will benefit from it by having a platform on platforms and using platforms that enable that collaboration. Now, there's a rising shift from code first to API first. You might have heard of that term, API first. And what that really means is that before there's any application code that will rely on an API, you want to be able to build the API first, prioritizing the API design before any other code gets going. Now, with this shift, engineering organizations are learning that they need the tooling, the enablement, and the process to be able to build and deliver those great APIs, and to get going real fast. And so if you're a consumer of an API building the application, you want to know what that API is going to do, and you want to be able to get it quickly. And without this clarity, development teams can waste a lot of valuable cycles searching for information, or worse, just get completely stuck. Now, API development is complex and multifaceted. You're doing the prototyping, the coding, the testing, and documenting, and that's just the beginning. All of these tasks and more, often fragmented across different tools, across different teams. These lead to the inefficiencies and the miscommunications and the delays that can be a real headache. And there's a lot of pitfalls if you're building an API in a kind of siloed way. A lot can go wrong. Disconnected tools and processes leading to time-consuming debugging, a lack of coordination between teams, leading to a lot of manual work, slow developer onboarding. You're going to have out-of-date APIs, a lot of potential to introduce security vulnerabilities as well. And when these developers are working in isolation, they're missing all the benefits of collaborative problem solving and shared knowledge, all of which can lead to delay and cause a lot of frustration. Now, while a lot of companies are using products like Postman to support their daily workflows, many teams, however, are still using them in a very limited way. Individual developers are running the tests, they're saving the requests, they're generating the API artifacts, but all in their own personal accounts or in the personal context. And doing so, you could describe this as being in a single player mode. They're not actually able to share this work with their teams, or at least not very efficiently. They're having to import or export code and doing it in all sort of arcane ways. And so when we see these developers and test APIs in silos, we see them duplicate work, we see them experience versioning issues, they spend excessive times in meetings trying to get to speed up on the API assets, and all of this leading to inefficient collaboration on API development. But it doesn't have to be this way. If you're dealing with an API, fundamentally you're either a consumer or a producer of an API, and at some point you're going to have to deal with an external stakeholder at some point. And so the way to be able to think about API development as a collaborative enterprise is really critical. You think about the front-end engineers, the back-end engineers, the QA engineers, the product managers, and all the other stakeholders. They need to be able to easily access the APIs in development. They need to be able to understand them. They need to be able to contribute, and they need to be able to mock and build and test and organize the APIs, along with all the documentation and your tests and all the other API artifacts. And you want that ideally in a single place where you can streamline the communication, reduce the need for time-consuming meetings or emails, and above all, keep your sanity. Here's a data point that I think I'd like to share that emphasizes the need for a collaborative approach to API development. So we publish a report each year called The State of the API. We have around 40,000 developers and API professionals responding to the survey. I believe it's probably the largest of its kind in the industry. And one particular question to call out here was what % of their APIs are intended for public consumption, i.e. the public internet or a public API, or is it just for your private organization within your organization? Or is it intended for partners, external partners to be able to build product integrations, for example? And the answer is that now 61% of businesses are building APIs for internal use only. And that is a growth of 50% year on year and a 50% growth on year over that. And so APIs you could have thought as maybe we're building a product as an API. That's absolutely the case. You're building an API to be able to build an integration with a third party or a partner of yours. But what we're seeing increasingly is just a trend that just keeps going up and up, is that the production of APIs needs to happen for the consumption of other teams within your organization. And that's a trend that necessitates collaboration. Okay, so we've talked about some of the challenges that teams face in the context of API development. And we've talked about the need for API development approach that is truly collaborative. Let's talk about some of the specific benefits about having a unified platform that enables all those things. First, it should dramatically accelerate your API development process. You should be able to feel a completely different level of velocity and effectively time to market or time to done. Two, it should improve the end-to-end quality of the API itself. And it should enable real-time collaboration across all the teams involved throughout the development process. And last but not least, it should enable security at scale with robust governance and compliance. Let's go into some of these in a little more detail. Whether you're prototyping or testing or documenting, you should be able to do this all in one place, eliminating the need to juggle multiple different tools in the context of API development. You want a way of collecting, organizing, and sharing those API artifacts and make it easy for your teams and other teams to be able to access those. You want to make it easy for those APIs to be discovered, shared, build, and run tests together, and ensure consistency across the development lifecycle. This is crucial for avoiding the kinds of errors that can occur when information is scattered across different silos and platforms. You should be able to quickly create, execute, and iterate on those APIs and reduce the time it takes to that satisfying 200 OK response. It should improve the quality end-to-end of the API. QA should be enabled by the platform through continuous testing and feedback loops, meaning that bugs and vulnerabilities can be caught early, well before they hit production. We want to save time and reduce the risks in live environments, of course. Now, back-end developers want to be able to build and share API mocks before the actual work is done, enabling the front-end and the UI teams to start building in parallel right away against those mocks. You want to be able to facilitate smooth editing and communication of any changes of any APIs at any point, ensuring that everyone is aware of the updates in real time, preventing the kind of rework that can slow down progress and increase costs. And real-time collaboration is crucial. Workspaces that contain collections of APIs and artifacts should be able to be shared, and you should be able to manage the access to those workspaces across your team, whether it be internal teams, your partners, or even the broader developer community. Workspaces should be a centralized location where all stakeholders can contribute and act as a single source of truth for all the related API artifacts, collections, environments, mocks, monitors, and other linked elements. And so collaborating in a workspace, your edits should be able to sync with your team in real time, ensuring everybody is aligned with no critical information being missed. And you want to be able to avoid the kind of workflow disruptions that occur when a team is out of sync. Workspaces should have a version history, a change log, to be able to review updates, transfers, even revert changes to collections and restore them to an earlier point in time. The product managers should be able to stamp out mocks and share those quickly. QA teams should be able to quickly write tests. DevOps teams should be able to quickly integrate those workflows seamlessly. All those teams collaborating and contributing in real time together. And of course, you want to be able to do this securely. As your API projects team grow, maintaining the compliance becomes an increasingly complex endeavor and is increasingly important. It should enable secure organization-wide distribution of APIs. Sensitive data and credentials should be protected, ensuring that it is tightly controlled and that your API remains secure. Local data residency options should be available to you to meet regulatory requirements, keeping data within designated geographic regions. These governance features should be designed to protect your APIs while enabling your teams to work efficiency and scale as needed. So those are the kind of benefits. Those are the benefits you should be able to derive from an API development platform that enables collaboration. And let's talk about some of the actual key features that you need to be able to have to enable that multiplayer mode across the development lifecycle. So to set the scene, let's walk through a kind of typical API development lifecycle process where all the players need to work together. You start off with the definition, you're working through the design, you begin development, the testing, secure, deploy, observe, distribute eventually to your consumers. And all the teams that are involved, product managers to define the API specs, the builders, the front-end and engineers who need to generate code for the API, keep code in sync with the latest specs, the QA engineers who write and trigger API contract tests and generate reports and maintain tests, the technical writers who create the API documentation, keep it in sync with the code base, and then get it published to their content publishing platform, and of course DevOps, who automate and streamline the integration and testing. Each of these teams have to be able to collaborate across the life cycle, and not just within even their own organization, but often with teams outside of their organization, one platform team versus another feature team. That's a lot of complexity to manage. So let's start talking about some of the core concepts here. The first is collections. The collection is a core foundational concept within Postman and the building blocks of API development. They allow you to organize a set of requests sent to API endpoints. A collection can also include the saved responses from those requests, along with each endpoint authorization type, parameters, headers, request bodies, tests, and settings. Collections enable you to organize your requests using folders and subfolders according to the requirements of your project. And then you want to be able to auto-generate documentation based on that collection. Collection also includes the environment information, the set of variables that you need so that you can reuse your requests and share with your team. And then you can reference them in request authentication, query, path, params, request bodies, and scripts. All of that you want to have in a structured format, making it easy to be able to share and collaborate with others. You want to be able to have the version control, the change management built into the collections, track changes, and that's crucial for maintaining the integrity of your APIs. So that's what collections are. They're the building blocks of API development. And a workspace, that's the vehicle for the collaboration itself. They contain the shared collections, and they enable you to be able to then invite members of your team. So it reduces the back and forth communication, ensuring that everybody has access to the latest information. And by grouping these different API collections in your workspaces, you're able to track changes, ensuring that everybody's working against the most current version. And it's the combination of workspaces and collections that fundamentally changes API development from a kind of single-player activity to a multiplayer team-based enterprise. Workspaces are the shared canvas for multiplayer teamwork. And there are different flavors, 3, of workspaces. Each are tailored to different collaboration scenarios. So you've got a public workspace. You're able to publish that into the public API network, and anybody on the internet is able to then join that workspace and start working against those APIs. Private workspaces, you're able to publish into your own private API network. So in that context that I gave earlier, if you're working on an internal organization, you've got that internal workspace, and now you can start inviting your different folks, different teams within your organization, but in a completely private context. And then you have partner workspaces as well, which is where you're working maybe with another company externally who want to be able to consume your APIs. Workspaces support role-based control access, so you're able to ensure that each collaborator has only the permissions appropriate, and you're able to maintain the security and order within your projects. And so by grouping API and collections into workspaces, you're able to manage access, track changes, and ensure everybody's working on the latest version of the current of the API. So how do all the teams stay updated? Well, users can post updates and track changes. So anybody on your team is able to collaborate and secure effectively, enabling automatic notification to members about changes of the API as they get changed in real time. And you can also add comments. You can at each other, right in line against the code for perfect clarity of context. And the team members can then respond with specific comments and create a conversation thread. So this really makes it easy to be able to follow the replies instead of losing context in various external communication channels. All this, by the way, especially the communication, can all integrate with Slack, if that's your preferred communication platform, as part of a native integration. So it's the combination of collections and workspaces that fundamentally changes development process from a single player activity into a multiplayer enterprise. Now, another key feature recently introduced is called package library, which provides the ability to reuse scripts for teams and individuals. So first, what are scripts? Scripts provide the workflow to your API, the workflow logic to your API requests. So you can use this to write tests, add dynamic behavior to your requests in your collections. You can use pre-requests and post-request scripts to write API tests, build requests that can contain dynamic parameters, and or pass data between requests. So they're really essential for the automation and making everything working smoothly. And you can add commonly used scripts and packages to your team's package library. Now, as we know, where there's code that is written, there's going to be a need to have it reused. So while repeating code across multiple requests is a problem on its own, even for a single player context, the problem gets magnified in a team setting when common logic is only shareable via copy-pasta. The results can be redundancy, low confidence, error-prone tests, and high resistance to refactoring and sharing. So the package library provides the ability to reuse those scripts for teams and individuals. They can contain the business logic and the code, which can be consumed by multiple requests. And by just referencing that package in various places by the team, you can then change once and use it everywhere. No more repeating business logic in the multiple places. Code reuse, as we know, saves time and reduces error, resulting in this context with higher quality APIs. We hosted our largest user conference in May in San Francisco this year. It was the first time since COVID, so that was super exciting. And our CEO, Abhinav Asana, stated that in the age of AI, everything is an API. It's asserting that language learning models have paved the way for nuanced chatbots and AI agents, and it's one thing for a chatbot to claim it can check real weather updates, but it's quite another for it to be able to pull the data from a weather service and then present it. And that magic ultimately is powered by APIs. And as AI continues to advance, APIs are evolving in parallel to amplify its potential. APIs are not one and done projects. They're not afterthoughts, which means you need to get your API design done correctly now to prepare for the wave of APIs that are coming your way with AI. Tools like curl, terminal, or command line tools for APIs just won't cut it anymore. APIs need to be built with users in mind, other machines. Users need to know what an API is and how it works. And if you can't do that, you're going to waste a bunch of time looking for the information, struggling for APIs to work. And that will be true from machine to machine interaction. Dev teams need to be able to collaborate on APIs just as much as they need to be able to collaborate on code. And of course, the AIs need to be able to collaborate with us as we develop the APIs. So this is where we introduce Postbot as your AI assistant. The AI assistant that is your collaborator for all things API testing and documentation. Postbot helps you design better test cases for API calls because it has a deep understanding of the API you're actually working on. It'll speed up your API testing workflow. Writing large test suites is time consuming, especially when you're getting started. And Postbot can write those from scratch, visualize responses, debug issues, and provide curated support. It can also update existing tests for your API calls through Collection Runner. Collection Runner enables you to be able to run a request in Postman over a specified order and functionality over your API. So Postbot plus Collection Runner just streamlines that entire routine, suggesting new test scripts, identifying potential issues, and provides relevant insights based on your API usage. So this massively reduces the manual effort, and the ability to be able to, as a developer, be able to ask it to write a test and update it is critical. To summarize, the benefits of an API development platform want to be able to accelerate development and deployment, enhance your onboarding for new team members, improve the quality and reduce errors, enable better communication and change management and scalability for growing teams and organizations. And so, in conclusion, what I'd like to say is that API development is not just a nice to have. In a collaborative context, it is a necessity. You need to be able to collaborate effectively as part of that process. From design, testing, documentation, and deployment, you want to make sure your teams can collaborate effectively and achieve exceptional results. One last thing, if you're interested in taking part of the survey, we'd love to hear from your voice and take part. So grab this QR code, take a few minutes to answer your question, and you'll be able to also access the results from the report. And if you've got any questions, we'll see you at the booth. Thank you very much.